What we're not going to do is have this become a stigma for your life. What we're not going to do is have you walk around feeling sorry for yourself. We're not going to do that. What we're not going to do is have you out here thinking that you can't receive help. I went down a whole list, and he hugged me and he said, "Mom, thank you." And the tears just poured.
Welcome to This Way Up, the podcast dedicated to supporting parents and caregivers navigating the complex world of mental health. I'm Andrea, and each episode we dive deep into the conversations that matter, exploring the challenges, triumphs, and transformative journeys of those facing mental health struggles within their families. Whether you're here for expert advice, inspiring stories, or just a little boost to get you through the day, we've got you covered. So grab a cup of coffee, kick back, and join us as we find the bright spots in the mental health journey, because we're all climbing our way up together. We've all met that person who just exudes positivity and energy and doesn't let life's bumps bring them down. Well, that is today's guest, Millionaire Williams, who is the author of Military Mom on a Mission. She shares today her personal story of loving a son who was plagued with PTSD and other more significant healthcare challenges when he returned from the Iraqi war, and how she used that as a platform to help other families who are in similar situations. I hope you enjoy today's episode, and if you do, please subscribe and share with all of your friends. Good morning, Million.
Good morning, Andrea. How are you?
Good. I have been waiting for months for this talk with you.
Yes.
Because I know it's going to be entertaining. If anything, it's going to be entertaining.
Yeah, to say the least.
Well, let me introduce you real quick.
Yes.
After an impressive career at Kaiser Hospital, Million was appointed by Governor Pat McCrory to serve on the board of directors for the North Carolina Council for Women. She's a certified life and mental health coach and is passionate in her work with the American Psychological Association, Citizens Commission on Human Rights International, and fellow of the North Carolina Institute of Political Leadership, to just name a few. In addition, her resume is as long as her personality is big. What caught my attention with Million is she is the author of the best-selling book, Military Mom on a Mission, an advocate for mental health. So Million, that is what caught my attention, and I want to start with that.
Got it.
I want to start with how you got there first, and then I want to talk about the book.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about what prompted you to write this book.
For years, I kind of felt that I would probably write a book one day, you know. But sometimes life has a way of speeding up your process to help you engage a little bit sooner than what you may have had a date and set time for. And with that being said, my son had joined the military, moved from LA at the time, going to family reunion. We actually flew into Virginia Beach, where my sister lived at the time, and her sons. So the idea was we'll fly into Virginia Beach, take two vehicles, take the kids, they can follow us, and we'll have fun along the route going to North Carolina. Well, unbeknownst to my sister and myself, my son had gone along with his cousins who had already joined the military prior to us arriving. And they joined the Marine Corps, which she was very disturbed because she served in the Air Force for 22 years. So, you know, that rivalry
competition.
It always exists in families, that particular dynamic. They talked my son into going down to the recruiter's office, and he was 23 at the time. So he didn't need his mom's signature. So you know where I'm going with that story.
Wait a second. You weren't even in California? You were in...
We were on a vacation. Yeah. Yeah.
Surprise.
With his round trip ticket and no one sitting in his seat coming back home. So this was all a total shock.
Yeah.
He was working in Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard, one of the busiest known spaces in Los Angeles. And he was working in sales, doing very well. Go figure. Well, anyway, moved the story along. He joined. So they come back to the house. Oh, Mom, guess what I did? Oh, we under the buddy pass. And I'm like, buddy, what are you talking about? Mom, I'm going to be a Marine like my cousins. We're going together. I sat there and I thought they were just joking around with my sister and I. He winds up staying there. I guess real security for me at that point was we were not in active war at the time when he joined. So I was like, okay, and this country had not been in war in God knows how many years. So that never, but 9/11 happens, the narrative changes. He was deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan for 9 months. So that
at 23
was a very troublesome time.
Yeah.
Just knowing he had to be there. And he got back. We had a huge celebration in California because that's where he grew up, all his friends. I walked into the restroom and my girlfriend comes in the restroom. We're talking and she says to me, Million, have you taken a look at Jerome's eyes? And I'm like, what do you mean have I taken a look at my son's eyes? My son is home from war. He's here with all his body parts.
Right.
He's here. Oh my God. And she says, no, I need you to stop a moment, stop being Million and look into your son's eyes and tell me what you see. And she was very adamant about it. She's an RN, so, she's got some backdrop there. So I said, oh, okay. I walk out. And I always have called my son Champion. So I said, Champion, give Mom another hug. I'm just so glad you're home. And I looked into his eyes with intentional look. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know who this person is. It was like somebody took a stake and just shoved it through my heart because I'm like, how did I miss all of this? How did I not see my son suffering in some way and suffering in a way I knew nothing about?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's probably because it was foreign to you. And like you said, you were focused on his physical being because that's what we imagine to change, right?
Yes.
Not what's inside. Oh, that must have been devastating.
It was. And, it just became a horrible scenario of life to have to endure for anyone to have to see your loved one become somebody that they weren't.
What were some of the things that you saw?
When I looked into his eyes, there was this stare that, okay, physically, this is my son, but the cliche, looking into someone's eyes, the window of their soul. Looking in his eyes, I didn't know who this person was. It felt very foreign to me. It felt like, I'm not sure this looks like my son. So, and I had to put on this facade because all these people were here at a jovial time. We're at a restaurant. We're all having fun. Everybody's glad to see him. But I had this dark cloud that hovered over my head as I stood there, still trying to process and then also trying to maintain, the jovial type of expectation for that dynamic that's happening.
Million, I don't think I have ever really thought of this. However, as parents of a child of any age or any loved one, quite frankly, you don't even have to be a parent of somebody who is struggling with their mental health. There are so many times that you have to put on that face.
Yes.
And you are someone you're really not. And you're crying inside and you're lost and scared and you're trying to just move through life. I would imagine that's true for anybody that even has somebody who's suffering physically. I haven't luckily had to experience that, but I mean, it's a tough position to be in.
Yes.
Especially when you are so acutely aware that they're struggling.
Exactly. And you don't have the skill set to really help them navigate life because you're struggling in the sense that you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where do you go? And, 9/11 happened many years ago. So at that time, PTSD wasn't even getting the awareness that we share now. It's a household name. Most people know. They've heard of PTSD. They know enough to know that has something to do with mental health challenges. They may not know that it's post-traumatic stress disorder, that that's what the acronym stands for, but they certainly have heard PTSD.
So he comes home and you're detecting something and you figure out it's PTSD. Then what happens?
And really, at that time, I didn't even know it was PTSD. So what winds up happening, because we're here in Los Angeles doing this big party, we got to go back to North Carolina, where the base is, where he's stationed and where I'm now living. So when we got back, I went over to the general's office because I'm going to start at the top. I'm not one of those ones that waste the time. If you're not a decision maker, love you, but you can't help me because you're going to still have to go up and talk to somebody else. But the general was actually over in Iraq at that time, so I didn't get to see him. So I'm going down the chain and I'm telling them, look, something's wrong with my son. They didn't even detect it at that time. Again, like I said, PTSD, I brought that to their attention only because my best girlfriend, she's a nurse, and she's the one that gave me the term. So they didn't even understand what was going on with him. Well, move the story along. 6 weeks after he gets out of the military, he has a full mental breakdown.
Wow.
Full on. I mean, running through the house like a madman.
Oh.
I mean, I never saw this behavior.
Was he living with you at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
So my husband and I, we wind up calling the cops. And here I am. I've never called the cops on any of my children and never thought that I ever would. But then I'm like, he's not a criminal, but what do? I don't know what to do.
Right.
You're just lost. So when the cops came, and because it's a military town, everybody understands this, And so there were two cops. One was a female, the other was a male. And so when they got there, he was sitting out on the porch. He had calmed down. My husband and I were standing outside talking with him. And they walked up and, I'd given all the information we called. So they were prepared to know, he's military. And so I spoke to the female first and, I gave her the backdrop. And she says, I understand what you're going through. And I'm looking at this woman like, you're a cop. How do you understand what we're going through with us? She's like, my husband, he's been in the military for 15 years. He's been deployed 4 times. We have children at home. And every time he gets back from deployment, we go through all of this. And I was like, oh my God. My son is not married, no children, but I'm thinking, my God, how do you have this going on with small children? For them to have to now see this and deal with it, I was like feeling worse for her than what I was even dealing with my son. So they told us, 1 or 2 things. We can take him over to get him evaluated, but if we do, we'll have to put him in handcuffs. And I'm like, no, you're not putting my son in handcuffs. He's not a criminal.
Right.
And they said, well, do you feel safe enough for him to drive? We'll drive in front of you. You can follow us. I said, yeah, he's okay now. So we got him over there. My husband and I and one of my cousins, she came over to just lend some support. We're there for 5 hours sitting, waiting. The doctor comes out. Oh, your son has PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, and severe psychosis. And I'm like,
where did all of that come from? That's a lot to hear.
At one time.
And
I said to him, are you a robot or something? Are you human? I said, how dare you come out to me? We've been sitting here 5.5 hours. You've been evaluating my son, and you come out here like you're reading off a menu. This is a human being you're talking about. This is a family you're talking about who loves their loved one that's in there with you. How dare you? I felt like I was in the ring just getting knocked out each time and had to get back up.
Yeah. No. So do they think that being in the military and what he saw in the military and the PTSD then triggered the other diagnoses that he got?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
That's exactly what happened. And, with trauma. Oh, and then the other thing that I learned, I'll give you this note. At the time, I was going back to school to get my degree in entrepreneurism. However, when this happened, I changed my major to psychology so I could even just clearly come alongside my son to help navigate the human mind and how things get tripped up and what's going on and the triggers that'll cause this to happen. I just kept delving in, like, how do I help him as his mom, but yet get all the information that I can learn about these disorders and learn a new narrative? Because I'm telling you, you then also have to become a different person because you're dealing with a different person that looks the same and is my son, but not my son.
Mm-hmm. That had to have been hard too, because he was still young, but he was an adult.
Yes.
So you had 20 plus years of this person.
Yes.
And then with really, even though he was away from the military, it was more like a flip of a light switch.
Right.
That all of a sudden he is a different person. And to be able to not only deal with his illnesses, but also to deal with some of the emotions that you had coming through all of that, you know, the sense of loss, sense of grief, sense of all of that. Boy, what a lot to carry.
Oh, yeah. And the thing about it, I learned in psychology that I'm labeled as secondary trauma because of his trauma.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And, you know, but taking psychology really helped me become grounded. It really helped me start understanding about the chemical imbalances in the human brain. I knew that I had to learn techniques and dialogue that was completely different. It was almost like learning a new language, being in a new country, learning new traditions and new cultures and how you talk to this person versus that person.
Sure. Yeah. And because those diagnoses that he had were were very severe. It's not just dealing with generalized anxiety disorder where you're, you know, but those are real
heavy duties.
Heavy.
I mean, and so I had to read up on each of them.
Yeah.
And then not to mention now the medication that goes along with it. One thing about it that was the best advantage that I had as his mom, we'd always had a loving, trusting relationship before all this happened. So because of that, Jerome gave me power of attorney over his finances as well as his medical decisions. So therefore, it gave me a voice. Every appointment he had, I was sitting right there in the doctor's office. And when they give him a new med, I'm like, okay, we're going to try this. I'm going to do my research on it. And if this medication doesn't work, we're trying something else. Because there was one point, one of the meds he was on, he just started drooling. I mean, it was like, you're turning my son into something that you're not going to do. I recognize we've got this illness and we're trying to figure things out, but I'm going to tell you what you're not going to do is cause my son to be dysfunctional more than what he needs to be.
Right. And you want him to still live. You want him to still have a life.
Yes. He's too young to have to deal with this where he's out of his mind, where he can't even function. And I'm like, this is not my son. And because his personality before this, he was the jokester in the family. He's the one that always had everybody laughing. So to see him go from this, we're not doing it. So he was on about 17 different medications, going through all, and then each medication having its different effects on gaining weight, it was just, when I tell you it was this maze that kept turning, jumping, and then I'm married, I'm working. It was, I don't even know how I still have my brain cells function, to be honest with you.
I know. Well, like you said, secondary trauma, right?
Yeah.
I want to take us back because you said something. I don't even know if you realized how important what you said was. You said we had a loving, trusting relationship before this. So it allowed me to be his power of attorney. I think as parents of young children, we forget sometimes that when they turn 18, we no longer have access to help them like we did before.
No, you don't.
And you don't know what will happen when they become adults. And thank God you had that relationship with him, that trust, right?
Yes.
Even if he wasn't, mentally stable at the time, you had that trust and you were able to get that. And what a blessing. What a blessing to you both.
Let me tell you, had he not signed those documents at the time where I would be able to intercept and challenge his doctors, because I'm going to tell you, a lot of the doctors are so overwhelmed, and I get that. They're just writing a prescription and going on to the next patient. I worked in healthcare for 26 years. I understand the dynamic of the beast after a while. It just comes with the territory. So it's not to blame a doctor or physician, and that's what they're taught and trained in medical school. They're doing what they were taught to do. But I had to become my son's voice. I had to become his advocate. And I will say this as the most important thing that I can give to anyone that would hear this. If your child or your loved one or you're struggling with mental health challenges, you need to have someone in the family that trust is there before things get really bad in your illness, because you never know what tomorrow may bring. You never know what may trigger you into psychotic stage at any point in time.
Right.
Have them sign that off, because I'm telling you, like you said, they're 18. And if the child says, well, I don't want my mother in the room, you can't go in there. I don't want my mom making decisions for there's nothing you can do. And I'm telling you, I thank God that I didn't have that level of hopelessness. I had enough of it, but to not have any controls and having the ability to manage some of that when you saw things going wrong. And my son will tell you, if it wasn't for my mom, he said this a million times, I would be dead. And I just know that. There's no way I would be alive today to talk about this to anyone. And when it's one of my loved ones and someone that I care about, I'll go to hell and back fighting for them on their behalf. It doesn't matter. So, I was never going to give up on my son, no matter how bad things looked, no matter how bad things they felt. No, he's a person that came out of my womb that God gave me, and that is part of my DNA. And it's the same thing like I've told people over the years. I said, if your son had cancer, you're just going to throw him out? I don't think so.
Right.
You need to figure it out. And I know everybody doesn't have the capacity that God has given me, and I get that. But I told this one mother, I said, well, you better pray for some capacity then, okay? Because this is not something that your loved one wants. These chemical imbalances happen in the brain, and until you understand the functionality of how all of that works in there, you see this outer shell of a human being that you wake up to, you go and put your makeup on, you go wash up, you go take a shower, you get dressed. But we're never thinking about, okay, right now as I'm talking to you, my heart is beating, the blood is pumping down to my feet, coming back up, my lungs, my respiratory, my nervous system, all of these different systems in your body are functioning without you doing anything. So I had to learn the functionality of how all these parts function in there, and just help him as much as I could, because I'm telling you, my son, I know he wouldn't be here today if I didn't take the steps that I did. And the bold steps, I even got my congressman involved. When this first happened, I wrote letters to the Naval Board of Corrections. I wrote letter to the VA administration. I got my congressman involved, my mayor involved, honey. Everybody on the East Coast knew that Million was like, oh God, here she comes.
Two things. First, on that, thank you. I had a girlfriend whose husband was in the military, and he was struggling with PTSD. And yes, he was going to see a therapist, but he wasn't getting any better because his therapist didn't have the clearance that she needed in order to help him be able to express what was going on. Now, this was several years ago. I don't know where it stands today, but I remember thinking to myself, that is tragic.
Yes.
That is tragic. There's got to be a way that they have therapists or doctors that can get that clearance so that these people can get some relief.
Yes.
But the second thing that you had said that I think is so important for people that haven't experienced somebody that has challenges with their mental health is that they don't want to be like that. And if they're acting in some sort of way, they're not doing it intentionally.
Right, exactly.
We had one of our very, very, very first guests. She has a young boy. Now he's probably 13 or 12 or whatever, but she was out playing ball with him on their driveway, and he cursed at her, and he was probably 6 or 7, and he had a meltdown and just cursed at her. And somebody walked by and said, "Great parenting." And she's like, whoa. And that stuff sits with you, especially as a new parent. Those comments sit with you. And all of a sudden you're like, it is a reflection of you. But her son wasn't a bad boy. She wasn't a bad parent. This is no different than having a broken arm or a broken leg. It's just something isn't healed.
Yes. And I know when my son first got diagnosed with this, I told him, I said, "Champion, I'm going to tell you what we're not going to do." Soon as we had the liberty to go into the room after that, I said, "Let me tell you something. What we're not going to do is have this become a stigma for your life. What we're not going to do is have you walk around feeling sorry for yourself. We're not going to do that. What we're not going to do is have you out here thinking that you can't receive help." I went down a whole list, and he hugged me and he said, "Mom, thank you." And the tears just poured. We're not going to walk into this like regular people do.
Right.
I said, because you have a warrior, number one, as a mother. And number two, I love you. And you're not a criminal. Okay. So we're not going to do the stigmatized look and feelings. And I know all of that also helped propped my son up for a successful journey. And have we had some pitfalls? We've had some up and downs where he's gotten off his meds, because that's a whole huge situation. And that did not come out well. And what happened to him, because he stopped taking his meds. 9 years, he was doing very well, living on his own, driving, having therapy 3-4 times a week. He was doing so well that his doctors, they recommend that he go to become a peer specialist, go for the training, got a certificate. So he was navigating along with his therapist, with other veterans, facilitating, doing that well. And he was doing voiceovers. He's got a really deep voice. And so he was getting in the jail of, things he liked to do, what he wanted to do. He calls me one day, because we'd speak 3-4 times a day sometimes, because I always have to make sure things
Once a mom, always a mom.
Girl, I'm telling you. So I'm like, he calls me one day, he says, "Mom, you never believe something." That I'm like, "What?" And I'm thinking, he's like, "Mom, I forgot to take my meds for a couple of days." I'm like, "Oh no, Jerome, that's not a good, no, why are you acting like, I'm thinking you're telling me some great news that, no, I don't agree with
that. That's not good."
He's like, "But Mom, you just don't understand. I don't feel lethargic and I feel so much better. And I'm like, "Okay, champion, I hear you and you're right. I don't understand because I don't take these meds. You're right. And I'm not going to dismiss any of your feelings. But what I do know is that you've been living a great life for the past 9 to 10 years, living on your own, managing your life, doing what you do." I said, what I would suggest and recommend, highly recommend, is that you call your doctor, ask them to possibly change your meds or reduce the dosage. But you're on some heavy meds and you should not just go off. You can't do this cold turkey, that you're going to have repercussions that you don't want to have to deal. He's like, "Mom, yeah, but you just don't understand." I said, "Okay, I don't understand, but it's okay that I don't understand, but I'm also giving you a recommendation with my understanding self." Okay. So I will accept that. However, this may not end well. And let me tell you, we went down the hill. He got so bad. I'm here in Texas. He's there in California. And I flew out of here probably 5 or 6 times during this episode that he had not taken his meds, calling the VA to try to get them to come take him. He got to the point he's walking the streets of Woodland Hills in his underwear.
Oh, gee.
That's how bad things got.
Yeah.
And that had never happened before. So I have gone through when I tell you the entire spectrum when it comes to what mental health unwellness looks like, I have lived through it all.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, darling.
That is a lot.
Oh.
For any parent especially one that is so involved, because you can
Yes.
tell how involved you are with your son, love him to pieces. What are you doing for yourself during this time? How are you taking care of Million to make sure that you're okay?
Oh, number one, my husband will tell you if he was here with me, my wife is going to sleep every night at 9 o'clock, whether she leaves me here out in this living room or do what I do. But that woman there is going to get her rest.
Good for you.
And that's the one thing I will tell any parent. And, I tell people I'm 68 years young. However,
You're 68.
yes.
You look like you're my age. You're gorgeous, girl. Well,
girl, if I'm telling 68,
I know. I'm 53.
Okay, well,
I'm
come
53.
On in, girl. It's good over here, darling. It's good over.
When I'm 68, I hope I'm looking like you.
Oh, you will. But let me tell you, number one, my sleep is paramount.
Good.
The thing about sleep, if you're just going to sleep and you're just laying there, but your brain is just won't stop, you're not getting your proper rest. You're laying down, but your body is not getting replenished. Those cells cannot rejuvenate with that much stress.
Well, I can tell you, sometimes that is really hard to do, especially when things are so stressful. But I know from personal experience, when I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't able to be there. I wasn't able to hold a thought, really.
You can't.
So I agree with you 100%. But I also will say it's hard to be able to get there to do that and find that peace. Okay, so we got sleep. What else did you do?
You have to take care of the physical needs of your body as well. You have to, when you're under this much stress, you have to ensure, because you as a caregiver, and it goes back to, the whole thing about the airline industry. They tell you have a child with you, mask yourself first, then the child. Because if you don't, both of you are going to be gone, okay? So that whole philosophy is also with caregiving. You have to ensure that you're still taking care of yourself. And because I became a certified life and mental health coach, I know all type of techniques that I teach my own clients. Mindfulness. The mind has a mind of its own, whether you want to accept that or not. Thoughts come in, you have no control of those thoughts. So each Saturday morning, I have 3 people that I take care of. Me, myself, and I. All 3 of us. I have one of those beautiful garden tubs. I have a whole elaborate setting that I go through with my candles. Oh my God. I sit there. I have on my rack there, I've got my cherries, my grapes. I may have a glass of wine. I may have a cup of coffee. I may have tea, have water, some crackers. And my husband knows he doesn't even go in because that is my time where I get away from the world. Sometimes I just lay back and relax and listen to mindfulness music. I do relaxation techniques where I breathe in each morning, hold that breath for 4, 5, 6 seconds. So when I tell you I love me, myself, and I, and take care of this one, oh yeah. Yeah, my husband will tell you, oh no, Million is going to take care of Million, okay?
But it's a hard thing as people who are people, right?
Yeah.
To put yourself first.
Especially as a mom, because that nurturing component is...
And I would tell you, when I would get into stressful situations, I wanted to help the other first.
Yeah.
And I would put so much energy that way. And it wasn't until I took some of that energy and said, okay, I don't need to feel guilty for using some of this energy to take care of me. And once I started to do that, that was when I was able to be a better caregiver for them.
Yes.
And that, honestly, I think that sometimes people think that self-care is this huge experience. There were some days that it was a 10-minute walk for myself.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm like, okay, you know what? I need something. And it just had to be. And then other days, it was a more elaborate experience for myself.
But yeah, I take care of those 3 people. My husband is, oh no, my wife, she's into her zone. No one's talking. No one, you don't even go nowhere near. And yeah, because I know at the capacity and the level that I live every day, I put out more energy and extend more energy than the average human being. I know that. People say to me, Million, how do you do so much of all of what you're doing? I have like about 4 or 5 different operations right now that I'm doing. And each one is void of each other. They're not even commingled. I mean, I've got a national program that 2 national programs that I've already put together. One is with the law enforcement and first responders that I'm working with the sheriff here and the chief of police here that I've done in North Carolina, California, doing it here. That's one platform. The book, my second, I've written a few books, but I have another national program I'm running, Mental Health Coalition for Women and Families. I have an anthology. I've opened up my own publishing. So
where was that in your bio? I didn't have that in your bio. Too long to write in the bio?
Yeah. But I will tell you this, and then the other thing that I did, right? So this is my book when I first wrote the military mom on a mission and advocate for mental health, right?
Yes.
Okay. I had to go a step further. Now I have the book in Spanish. So we're going to be releasing that. Yes. I don't stop. Girl, please. I'm just all over the planet.
So something else that I see with you is that you are a doer. I don't think that's any surprise to anyone out there. I went to a talk several months ago, and it was this woman talking about being a doer and doing good. And she had said there is PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. And then there's also PT, post-traumatic growth, PTG, post-traumatic growth. And that is for the people that take those stressful situations and turn them into good and to purpose. And I started to do some research on that. And I think I'm one of those people too. It's like, okay, I've got this experience. And not only are you helping how many other people out there, you're also helping yourself.
That is profound. OMG.
Look it up. It's amazing. And it's such a great way.
Oh my God. That is really who I am. I have always turned pain into purpose. No matter what it is, I just don't even care. It doesn't matter.
You keep preaching the good word because...
Oh, I have to.
One, turning pain to purpose.
Yes.
You need to do it for your boy, and you need to do it for really the rest of the world because mental health is something that needs more exposure. Thank you so much, Million. I knew I would love my call with you.
Much love to you.
Thanks for tuning in to This Way Up. I hope you're feeling a little lighter, a little brighter, and ready to take on whatever comes next. Remember, the journey of mental health is all about progress, not perfection. So keep climbing. And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lift.